discussion. So if anybody has their video on that doesn't want their face being recorded, then please switch your videos off now. And that's everything in terms of housekeeping. Anyone that makes anyone that causes any disruption, I'll just be removing them. So bear that in mind before you comment as well. So we're going to start now. I'm going to just do a little bit of an intro into the campaign and then pass on to my comrades. So we're here today to talk about the Prisoners for Palestine campaign, which is a prisoner-led campaign, and it was born kind of from the cells of the prison. And it was an idea that was sparked from our Prisoners for Palestine, in which they wanted to continue their efforts of resistance and fight for justice. After exhausting all options and all other options, we've got to the point now where our Prisoners for Palestine are wanting to reclaim power back through taking hunger strike action, which you'll have heard about last week when we made the announcement. But this has been an ongoing conversation for many, many months and has been carefully thought through, and really is kind of like a last resort in terms of attempt to continue to continue to fight power with power. So the campaign was born from the prison cells. It is prisoner-led, and every step of the way it has a focus on the Prisoners for Palestine. Obviously, like the aim is really to continue the resistance efforts and continue to shut down the Zionist machine that exists within the UK. But the campaign itself also highlights the double standards that are faced by Prisoners for Palestine, the neglect and the corruption that is faced by Palestine-based activism and activists that choose to resist through direct action and other mediums as well. So our panelists today will be Francesca Nadine, Audrey Corno, who are both ex-prisoners for Palestine, meaning that they have also been in prison and are now out. And I'm speaking on behalf of their comrades who are currently still within the UK dungeons. We also have Mansoor Adayfi, who is joining us as part of our campaign with Cage, who are our negotiating partners. Mansoor is also an ex-Guantanamo prisoner and a long-time hunger striker. So his knowledge will be, a great benefit to this discussion. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Audrey, who's going to start the discussion. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that brilliant introduction. Would you be able to share screen with the slides, please? Thank you so much.
Yeah, I knew I was forgetting something. I'm going to do that now.
Perfect. Thank you. So the first thing that we thought we wanted to start with in this workshop is to introduce who are the prisoners for Palestine, right? And they are 33 prisoners for Palestine in British prisons at the moment. This consists of the Filton 24, the Bryce Norton 5, and the Moog 4. So the Filton 24 is the most sort of known action. I'm sure everyone has heard about it, but just so we've covered all our bases, the Filton 24 are 24 actionists who have allegedly broken into the Filton site of an Elbit Systems factory. So Elbit Systems, as I'm sure most of us here know, is Israel's largest private weapons manufacturer, which has sites across Britain. And these actionists are alleged to have broken into and caused over £1 million of damage. This is to drones and quadcopters whose fate, if they were not destroyed, would have been sent to Gaza to continue the genocide. So yeah, we've seen footage of them ramming through using a disused prison van, ironically, broke through and disrupted that weapons factory, and have the first people who were arrested have now spent over a year on remand. So they have been in prison without trial, before trial, without any convictions, have been in prison. And yeah, sort of in waves, there have been more arrests in connection to this action. Next is the Bryce Norton Five. So the Bryce Norton Five are 5 actionists who are alleged to have broken into RAF Bryce Norton to target and disrupt the RAF surveillance flights that the UK has been doing for the Zionist entity. Obviously collecting intelligence for Israel. These actionists, we saw the footage of them spraying red paint into the engine of RAF jets. And yeah, they have since been remanded. These 5 actionists, allegedly in connection to this action, have been remanded and have now been in prison for several months now. Then we have the Moog 4. So the Moog 4 action has taken place actually after the prescription of Palestine action. So that's an important detail, that they were still remanded and don't have a terrorist connection, but have still been remanded and been treated terribly in prison. Yes, so they were not connected to Palestine action at all. These actionists were part of a group called the Palestinian Martyrs for Justice, where each of the 4 actionists wore a T-shirt of Palestinian martyr that they admire, one of which was Dr. Rafat al-Hariri, the very famous Palestinian poet. And they are alleged to have gotten onto the roof of Moog. So Moog is an American aerospace company that are part of the F-35 jet scheme, which is infamously used, or what's the word for famously, but with a bad connotation. I forgot the word, but they're known. The F-35 jets, notorious. That's it. Thank you very much to Elle in the group chat. Notorious. The F-35 jets are notorious for flying over Gaza, and they're one of the main tools of the genocide by Israel. So Moog produced parts for the F-35, and the Moog 4 got onto the roof of the factory in England and cut a hole into the roof. And so from the footage of that action, we saw them saw the footage looking into the factory and seeing the parts that are being made to cause a genocide. So these are the alleged actions of the prisoners for Palestine, for which all of them have been on remand. Still, none of them have any convictions or have been found guilty by any jury. Now, although most of them have been in prison for coming over a year, the treatment that they've suffered in prison has dramatically worsened since the prescription of Palestine action. Not only is this illegal, because they are being punished retrospectively for the prescription of an organization that they have not been active in since being remanded, but supposedly, if we're following the prison's logic, they've been in rehabilitation, right? They surely would have been improved by the prison's logic for all the time that they've spent in prison, and yet they're still being punished retrospectively for the prescription of Palestine action. So what this has looked like in practical terms is many of them have been removed from jobs, have been removed from recreational activities, citing security concerns. And this has escalated massively since prescription. We've seen prisoners be suddenly transferred to other prisons away from their comrades and very far away from their families. This is a punitive measure that prisons have taken to try and further isolate prisoners for Palestine and to break their spirit, which has of course been in vain. We've had reports of certain prisons putting up posters on the wings, specifically where the prisoners for Palestine are, to notify all prisoners of the prescription of Palestine action, and that any prisoner seen to show support for this organization will face terrorism charges or consequences. So this is, again, another attempt to scare, to isolate prisoners for Palestine and to scare other prisoners from associating with them. So yeah, we've seen these, these posters in prisons. We've also had guards straight up go up to some of the prisoners and tell them, you are a terrorist, you have been recategorized as a terrorist, and we're going to be treating you as such, and also spreading these rumors to other prisoners. We've seen in Bronzefield last month, all the prisoners for Palestine had their kafiyas taken away because supposedly this is branding for a prescribed organization, which is, of course, absolutely ridiculous. And then most recently, yesterday, Kesser reported that she's been put on a basic regime, which means that she basically only gets 30 minutes out of her cell every day because she was using the prison pod system. They told her to get off for no apparent reason. She refused, and she's been put on basic. So again, this constant targeting and repression of prisoners for Palestine has been consistent but massively escalated since the prescription. And they've tried legal avenues. There's supposed to be an abusive process hearing, which has been pushed back. They've used the prison complaint system to try and hold the prison accountable for their actions, which has led nowhere. And of course, the fact that they've been remanded at all, the fact that they've been put in prison without a trial, without conviction, means that all legal avenues have failed them. They have not been able to achieve justice for themselves and have their rights consistently taken away from them. So that is the context in which they are now taking action, some of them going on hunger strike to resist these conditions and to resist the label of being called a terrorist, and to resist and to achieve the demands that will be set out very soon. So yeah, that's a quick introduction to the prisoners for Palestine at the moment. I'll pass on to Francesca to tell you a little bit more about the demands.
Thank you for that. So I want to just talk a little bit about what is the political philosophy behind this? Like, what's the underpinning of all the actions that we want to take? So I think first and most important is to say that me and Audrey, in starting this collective, wanted to use our own personal experiences of our time in prison to do to start this new collective, and that everything that we do, everything is based around the prisoners. It's led by the prisoners. We're just here to support them, to amplify their resistance, and to use them as a rallying cry, and to make them the center of our struggle, just as it is in Palestine and many other places as well. They are at the sharp end of the repression of the pro-Palestine movement, which is happening everywhere now. There's so much repression. It's just crazy at the moment. And they're the ones that are suffering that more than anybody else in this country. So it's up to us to support them and to follow their lead, really. We think of this idea as like tearing down the prison walls, like not leaving them to be isolated, which is what the state is trying to do to them. And not only that, but also international solidarity is key to all of this. So we are working with prisoners from different countries. We see ourselves as part of a global movement of prisoners for liberation, for Palestine and for prisoners everywhere. So of course, the prisoners have been systematically repressed, silenced, immobilized. They feel incredibly frustrated, that it feels to them like now they're stuck in a prison cell, sitting there, rotting away, and they can't do anything. So this is why we are putting all this together, to help everybody to understand, both the prisoners and us, that that's not it. Taking action, allegedly, and going to prison is not the end of your actions for Palestinian liberation. In fact, completely the opposite. Now is the chance for them to take power back into their hands and just flip the script, really. They are using their bodies in the most radical way possible. They're putting themselves on the front line. They're taking that risk because they understand the power of that. This is really a historic moment. We haven't had, as far as I know, a collective hunger strike of this size in this country for 30 years at least. So really, it's up to us to take action on the outside, to do it justice, to give them the platform that they really deserve. And they're doing this strike and many other kinds of solidarity action. This is not just about a hunger strike. They're doing it for freedom, for justice, for their own dignity, for life. So I think those are the things that we really need to think about. And the fact that the government's basically left them with no other choice. So of course we have this specific campaign now. We're talking about hunger strike. So we may ask, what are the aims of this? So of course we have our demands, which I can read out in a minute if people haven't seen them already. But beyond the demands, there are many different reasons we can undertake a campaign like this, a hunger strike. It's also about visibility. We need to shine a light on everything that's happening right now, because prisons isolate people. They don't want anybody to know the kind of things that go on in there, because they are constantly breaking the law. So it's to shine a light on that treatment, and also on everything else that's happening this month. November there's a lot going on. So we have the legal challenge to the prescription of Palestine action. There's also a hearing to challenge all of these trials, to say that there's been abuse of process. Then if that doesn't go ahead, then we will have the first trial of the first Filton prisoners that have been in prison for over a year now. And then, of course, we have all these Defend Our Juries actions, which have become just a mass movement of civil disobedience. So we'll also be working with them. So, of course, what we want to do is get as many different actors as possible, doing as many different things as possible to make this a really effective and really visible campaign. We want to shine a light on that, but from the grassroots. You know, we're fighting against these institutions. We don't want to work with them. We don't want to pacify them or reform them. That's absolutely not the case. So I can talk a little bit about the demands now. I'm sure a lot of you have read the letter already or seen the video. That's online, as is the printed letter as well. But I'll just talk a little bit about these. So there's 5 demands, and they all have different purposes. They're all political demands, of course. Only the first one is about the prison conditions, and that is to end all censorship. And the reason this is a demand and why it's so important is because it shows how the political interference in the prisoners' lives is just a daily thing, and it goes right from the bottom up, from the prison staff that refuse to give them their letters on an arbitrary basis, to the governors that block their phone calls because they make political statements, and you know, all the way to the top to the lack of a fair trial, which I'll talk about later as well. So I just want to say here that all these demands are actually linked together. It all forms part of a whole, and this is just the first step in this. So of course, you know, it's a basic human right to have freedom of expression, to be able to express your political views, a right that's seriously under attack in this country for everybody right now. People are scared because they don't know if they'll be arrested for something that they say, right, at a speech, at a protest or whatever. And this is affecting the prisoners in quite an extreme way. They've been refused contact with their friends, their families, their loved ones. They've been silenced completely. So this is really an important demand for that reason. Then, of course, after this, we are asking for immediate bail for everybody. Not just because for a lot of prisoners, they've gone way over the custody time limit of 6 months. That's a given, and that's something that the prison system does to a lot of prisoners on a regular basis as an abuse of power. But also because these are not supposed crimes that would usually get people on remand. It doesn't fulfill any of the usual rules to put people on remand. Remand should be an exceptional thing if there's no other options available, and this really isn't the case. So we can just see here that the process is the punishment. And because for such a long time, people didn't know when the trial was actually going to be, we can see here this idea of administrative detention, which the British introduced to Palestine and are also using over here in a different way, of course. So the right to a fair trial is the next demand. So something that have been spoken about a lot, but I don't know if everybody's aware of this, is the fact that there's been lots of undisclosed meetings between lots of different state actors, the government, the Attorney General, the police, and then Israeli officials and representatives of Elbit Systems. So we can see a very close relationship here. We're only aware of it because of the freedom of information requests that have come out that are heavily redacted. So, of course, how can people have a fair trial if they don't have all the evidence? So this is a clear case of political interference. And if he had these documents unredacted, they would be able to make that argument in court. But the government, for obvious reasons, won't allow that. Alongside these documents that specifically relate to some of the cases, we also demand that the government releases the records of all Elbit Systems UK's arms exports in the last 5 years, because that's also extremely relevant to this case. And it's no coincidence that after the prescription of Palestine Action, September 2024 September 2025 was the second highest month on record of arms exports from Britain to Israel. So we can see a very clear link here between the shutting down of action, of dissent, of protest in this country, and the arms sales, which was exactly what was spoken about in these meetings. We have no doubt about that. So the next one, we're talking about terrorism, the scary word, right? So we have two parts to this demand. So deprescribe Palestine Action, which of course helps us to shine a light on the legal challenge on the judicial review that's coming up shortly. And the reason that this is important to the prisoners is because the first people that are arrested this was before the prescription of Palestine Action, quite a long time before, almost a year before. And it's quite clear to us from everything that we've seen that this was the first step in a coordinated plan to be able for the government to be able to get to the point almost a year later to prescribe the entire organization. They already had this excuse because there are already people on remand in prison for supposed terror link actions, which there is no evidence for. So that brings me to the next one, which is to drop the terror links from all of these cases. So what does a terror link mean? That means that the prisoners will be tried as if it was a normal criminal case, criminal damage, property damage, etc. And so the jury will think this is just a normal criminal case. But when it comes to the sentencing, when the jury's already decided if they're guilty or not guilty, the judge can decide to say, on the basis of zero evidence, this has a terror link. So I'm going to give you an extra 10 years in prison. And there's no accountability for that whatsoever. So the idea of a fair trial in front of a jury has just gone completely out of the window. And alongside this, so we also demand an apology from Yvette Cooper, who was at the time of the prescription of Palestine Action, the Home Secretary. So what happened around this period of time? Yvette Cooper was out in the media, on the news, writing articles in right-wing newspapers, slandering the prisoners, along with anyone else who had been involved in Palestine Action, again, with no basis in fact. So these kind of ridiculous ideas like Palestine Action was possibly funded by Iran, that there was these were violent actions, all these kind of things that were just any excuse possible to justify the decision that she'd made. And even the government lawyers here, we saw in a document, recommended that this didn't meet any of the any of the usual definitions of terrorism. So we can see again that this word is just being thrown around to scare people, and people are very easily scared by that, of course, because of the way the government's framed it. But there's no basis in fact for any of this, and the actual government people admit that as well. So then on to the last demand, and this is now more of a call to action to the general public, and again to shine a light on this company Elbit Systems, and to get people talking about what's still happening now. These arms exports are still continuing, and not only that, now the government is about to give Elbit Systems a £2.7 billion contract to train British soldiers in this country, and that would make them a strategic partner with the British Army. So this came out in the news. There was, one day, and after that, nobody else seems to be talking about it. So it's really essential for us to bring this back to the front of the conversation, that all of this is linked together. The repression of the prisoners, the lack of a fair trial, the lies and the slander is all because of this company that is constantly lobbying the government and throwing money at them to continue to export arms and to continue the genocide in Palestine. So we can see the importance of understanding how all of this is basically part of the same thing. So the other thing to say about this is the strike is starting on Balfour Day. So again, coming back to the fact that it is the British colonial legacy that has resulted in everything that's happening right now. It's just a line that's threaded through the history of Palestine, sadly. And it's our responsibility as citizens of this colonial country to take action in any way to prevent this from happening. So it's what we talk about with the prisoners is making a sacrifice, right? So that's what they're doing. So we have to step up and do the same thing on their behalf. So I'll pass it over to Audrey now for the next part.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that, Francesca. So the next bit is I want to go over why go on hunger strike. This is a very big sacrifice, as Francesca's just said, and it's a very big decision to make. So yeah, some people might ask, why go on hunger strike? Why put your health and your body in so much danger? And I think the main answer really is, as I can speak from experience. Both I think Francesca mentioned, both Francesca and I have spent some time on remand also earlier this year, and speaking from experience, they're really structurally, systemically, they instill a feeling of impotence onto you. At least that's how I felt. There really is this feeling of there's nothing I can do, and it's just not true. It's just how structurally they make you feel, and you're locked in 3 times a day. They take your freedom away from you, and hunger strike is one of the ways that you can take some agency back, right? When you've had your freedom, your loved ones, most of your material possessions taken away, one of the few things that you do have left is your own body. And there are other ways of resisting, that could be arguably, one might argue could be more disruptive, or others, but this hunger strike is a non-violent way of resisting that leverages the prison's duty of care. Supposedly, the British prisons have a duty of care towards their prisoners and have to do their utmost to meet their needs. And so when a prisoner goes on hunger strike, that is leveraged, right? They want to achieve their demands through this duty of care. And beyond that, there can be some skepticism around this, and then that's fair, considering prisons have let others there have been deaths in custody. Just recently in Bronzefield, there were 2 deaths in 2 days, which of course they won't take responsibility for. But beyond that, the hunger strike and taking this step, taking this, final resort of putting your body and your health at risk is, at the end of the day, the natural reaction. Like I went over earlier, every other avenue has failed. They've tried going through the courts. They've tried going through the prison system. They've called the prison ombudsman. They've called the prisoner advice service. They've called the IMB, the Independent Monitoring Board. And for what? For what, right? We've seen it's made no material difference to their conditions and to their case. And so the only way that they have left to make their voices heard and to make these entirely reasonable demands achieved is through drastic action, which looks like a hunger strike for some. So it's also really important to note that this method echoes the struggle of Palestinian prisoners who often in Israeli dungeons use the hunger strike to fight for better conditions. The suffragettes also, slightly longer ago, but the suffragettes in this country's prisons also use the hunger strike not only as a way to get better conditions, but to get bail, and that was successful for some. So the quote that I want to read from Kaleem Hawa, I believe that's a slide just before or after. Thank you. He says, perfect, thank you. The hunger strike flips the normal script on its head of docility as the sentence, hunger as the jury. It is a snapping of the colonialist tool, a reminder that dignity persists within the colonized subject, a reconfiguration of the colonial order both within the prison and beyond it. The hunger striker does not run away from life, but towards freedom. Their act rejoins the body in stasis and self in isolation toward a politically committed whole, insisting upon the right to narrate its own captivity. That's Kaleem Hawa, a Palestinian writer and organizer, who put it much, much more eloquently than I ever could. So yeah, in its essence, it's about taking power back. If you could quickly just go back to the slides before, please. Thank you so much. Sorry for making you flip around. Yes, so previously, earlier this year in August, T. Hoxha, who is one of the Filton 24, went on a hunger strike for these 3 demands that you can see on the screen. Reinstatement of the library job, reinstatement of recreational activities, and censorship. So which echoes, one of the demands that we see now. T. Hoxha, who I met while I was in prison. We were on the same house block together. She's a very close friend of mine. She went on this hunger strike for the reasons that we've explained above. She tried every other avenue to try and achieve these demands. She went through the complaint system. She went through her solicitor, and yet, such simple demands she had to go on hunger strike for. And it was very difficult. We cannot understate the severity, the gravity of this sacrifice. We collectively witnessed Hoxha, T. Hoxha, gradually get weaker and weaker. She got to a point weeks in, where her hair was falling out. She had a rash all over her body. This was in week 1, actually, but further on in the weeks, her eyesight was almost lost. It was very blurry. She couldn't stand up. She had to have someone help her to walk if she needed. She struggled to have conversations for more than a few minutes. And yet she emerged victorious from it. After 28 days, she achieved most of her demands. Yes. So first, we've got the reinstatement of the library job. So they took, the stars have gone away. The library job she was removed from following the prescription of Palestine action. And although they didn't want to say this was kind of, you know, hinted and said to her offhand that she's now considered too much of a risk to work in the library, despite having worked one-to-one with people in the library in Bronzefield and for a few weeks in Peterborough in the prison she was transferred to before being removed. So, you know, that begs the question, what happened between Bronzefield and Peterborough, where now all of a sudden she's this dangerous terrorist when she'd been doing this job perfectly fine before? So although this demand wasn't achieved, she still unfortunately is not working as a librarian the way she was before. She did manage, through this hunger strike, to force them to give to her a letter that says in black and white, the reason she's been removed from her library job is because of the prescription of Palestine action. Now, this is a really significant win still, because they've just admitted to doing something completely illegal. They cannot punish her retrospectively for the prescription. So her solicitor has since been taking on a legal challenge against the prison for this. The other two demands have been fully achieved. Within the first week of her hunger strike, she was very quickly reinstated back to her recreational activities. They claimed that this was an admin error, that they didn't mean to do this. But of course, they reinstated her because she obviously poses no risk. And they were very stubborn about the censorship. She knew that they were holding back letters and postcards that people were telling her about, but she was never receiving. And of course, you know, there's security rules that apply to everyone in prison, that there can't be, you know, offensive, you know, sort of language that incites hatred, you know, security things like, you know, you can't write in code, or you can't give instructions on how to escape prison. So these are rules that apply to everyone, right? Those were the rules that they were claiming they were holding it against. But she knew, of course, you know, there were just drawings from young children and just, you know, innocent, sweet messages from her family that she wasn't receiving. And for weeks in the hunger strike, they insisted, no, we're holding these back for security reasons. But of course, towards the end of her hunger strike, finally she receives a bunch of letters and mail that had been withheld from her for months, since before her transfer. She received a bunch of her mail, which confirmed, now that she's had no security concerns, and they were just holding this arbitrarily to punish her. So 2.5, I guess, out of the 3 demands were achieved in this hunger strike. And towards the end, during the hunger strike, there was, you know, Francesca spoke about how vital it is to have international solidarity. And this happened for T. Hoxha. Casey Goonan was one of the American political prisoners who did a solidarity hunger strike with T. Hoxha. Casey Goonan is the only political prisoner from the student intifada movement in the U.S. And joined Hoxha on the hunger strike. And Hoxha wrote a letter to Casey expressing her gratitude, and I'll just read a little extract here. She writes, "There's so many questions to ask. How is the pain? Is your eyesight getting blurry too? Does talking make you breathless? Have you cried when you smell food on the landing? Do you still cry when you watch the genocide in Palestine? Does the cruelty sicken you more than the inevitability of your body's self-cannibalization?" I'm reminded of a poem by Turkish prisoner, which, you know, she didn't mention, but it's Nazim Hikmet Ran, who writes, the title of the poem is Some Advice to Those Who Will Serve Time in Prison. An extract of that poem is, "Better I had swung from the end of a rope like a flag. You'll put your foot down and live. It may not be a pleasure exactly, but it's your solemn duty to live one more day to spite the enemy." And then she continues writing. She says, "We both know this isn't about a library job, but the principle behind it. They lock us up when they want, holding us without trial, strip search us, control what feels like our very existence, our food, our health, our movement, our association, our communications, our medication, our pain relief, our books. This is about rejecting our good characters being sullied by the label extremist. Not allowed to work in the library because the state says we hold extremist views. I cannot accept this lie. Everything counts towards freedom." And that's the extract I'll leave you with for T. Hoxha. So we've seen a hunger strike already be successful in her case, and that was an individual hunger strike. So now that we have, a collective hunger strike coming soon, this can yield a lot more power altogether and make for much more ambitious demands. So I'll pass back to Francesca to talk a little bit more about hunger strikes historically.
Yes, thank you for that wonderful story full of hope. So yeah, I want to talk a little bit more about the historical context of hunger strikes, something that we've studied, we've learned from, that inspires us as well. Of course, there's many different examples for different times, for different geographies, revolutionaries that inspire us with their strength, with their resolve. So of course, this is just to understand the context. We are not comparing ourselves to these different stories because they're so different, but it's more about understanding the political lineage of this, and how we understand our place in that. So when I mentioned at the beginning that this will be the biggest collective hunger strike, as far as I know, in this country for 30 years, we have to talk about Bobby Sands, of course, because everybody knows Bobby Sands. He became a martyr in 1981, and along with that, cemented his place as a historical figure that continues to inspire a lot of people. So this was during the brutal war that the British waged in Ireland, the colonial settler project that continues to this day. And Bobby Sands, as the IRA commander in H Block in the Maze prison, started this hunger strike, which lasted 66 days. The main aim of this was to be considered as political prisoners with all the privileges that came with that. The unique thing about Bobby Sands' case that he was elected as MP during his hunger strike from inside prison. That was a historic event, and it was so historic that the British government later made a law to prevent that from ever happening again. He was the youngest MP that was elected at that time, but obviously he never got to take his seat in Parliament. So after 66 days, he died, along with 9 other hunger strikers. And after his death, more than 100,000 people went to his funeral. And there was a popular uprising in the streets in the north of Ireland, various days, and it changed the face of their struggle forever. So I just want to read a short extract from Bobby Sands' diary entries, because I think it illustrates so well the kind of feeling that people have when they're on hunger strike. So I'm actually going to say a bit more than this one here, from the first and from the last. I'm standing on the threshold of another trembling world. May God have mercy on my soul. I'm a political prisoner. I'm a political prisoner because I'm a casualty of the perennial war that's being fought between the oppressed Irish people and an alien, oppressive, unwanted regime that refuses to withdraw from our land. Foremost in my tortured mind is the thought that there can never be peace in Ireland until the foreign, oppressive British presence is removed, leaving all the Irish people as a unit to control their own affairs and determine their own destinies as a sovereign people, free in mind and body, separate and distinct, physically, culturally, and economically. I believe I am but another of those wretched Irishmen born of a risen generation with a deeply rooted and unquenchable desire for freedom. I ate the statutory weekly bit of fruit last night. As fate had it, it was an orange, and the final irony, it was bitter. The food is being left at the door. My portions, as expected, are quite larger than usual, are those which my cellmate is getting. And then the last day, the 17th day of his hunger strike, was the last day that he was able to write. I imagine after that he was too weak. I was thinking today about the hunger strike, People say a lot about the body, but I don't trust it. I consider that there is kind of a fight indeed. Firstly, the body doesn't accept the lack of food, and it suffers from the temptation of food and from other aspects which gnaw at it perpetually. The body fights back, sure enough, but at the end of the day, everything returns to the primary consideration. That is the mind. The mind is the most important. But then, where does this proper mentality stem from? Perhaps from one's desire for freedom. It isn't certain that that's where it comes from. If they aren't able to destroy the desire for freedom, they won't break you. They won't break me, because the desire for freedom and the freedom of the Irish people is in my heart. The day will dawn when all the people of Ireland will have the desire for freedom to show. It is then we'll see the rising of the moon. So after Bobby Sands died, the Palestinian prisoners actually wrote a letter to him and smuggled it out of their prison. It said, "We salute the heroic struggle of Bobby Sands and his comrades, for they have sacrificed the most valuable possession of any human being. They gave their lives for freedom." So yeah, now of course we have to talk about Palestinian prisoners. So that's the next picture, right? So yeah, we can talk about Marwan Barghouti. So many people talk about him as the Palestinian Nelson Mandela, whatever may people think of that. So this is why, because he's so popular in Palestine, that they still now refuse to let him out of prison after 20 years, even with the current prisoner swap that's taking place. So he organized in 2017 a mass hunger strike of around 1,500 prisoners to demand better conditions and an end to administrative detention. So this gained worldwide support, and there were protests throughout the West Bank as a result of this. There was plenty of repression from the prison guards, including the use of solitary confinement. But despite that, after 40 days, they didn't break the strike and they won their demands. The Israeli government was forced to negotiate with them. So we have here just a short extract from the letter that he wrote when he started the hunger strike. I'll just read this quickly. Israel's prisons have become the cradle of a lasting movement for Palestinian self-determination. This new hunger strike will demonstrate once more that the prisoners' movement is the compass that guides our struggle, the struggle for freedom and dignity, the name we have chosen for this new step in our long walk to freedom. Rights are not bestowed by an oppressor. Freedom and dignity are universal rights that are inherent in humanity, to be enjoyed by every nation and all human beings. Palestinians will not be an exception. What is it with the arrogance of the occupier and the oppressor and their backers that makes them deaf to this simple truth? Our chains will be broken before we are, because it is human nature to heed the call for freedom regardless of the cost. So with that, I think we can hear from our special guest today, Mansoor, who's here to tell us about his own experiences of hunger striking. Are you there, Mansoor?
Yeah, I'm here, and my heart is crying with Bobby Sands. I visited his grave and other two friends in Belfast when I was there last year, and it was really sad moment, a connection, because you know when we were at Guantanamo, we we were just numbers in orange suit, hooded, gagged. The narrative that was sold to the world, the worst of the worst, terrorists, vicious. Anyway, so when we spent the first month, even before that, intensive hunger strike, torture, abuses, and so on. And even being you as a human being, as someone who has lived 20, 25 years, that your way of life was not acceptable to the guards, to the administration, to anyone. The way you look, the way your name is pronounced, guards were told these guys killers. And you can see that the guards, if they have chance, they would kill you. So, I mean, you cannot eat. You cannot really eat because there is no meaning of life anymore. When someone, strip you of everything, turn you into nothing. So we tried to understand what was going on. Well, what they call us the worst of the worst, a terrorist. There was no explanation. Hate, garbage, beating, torture, and so on. So at some of us, or many of us, we came from a tribal background, like myself. I'm not gonna accept any humiliation. Go fuck yourself. That's not why I'll be treated. Sorry for the F word. Anyway. So, but at the same time, we have very conservative and to some extent religious teaching that you cannot behave in certain way. You cannot curse. You can't. We tried to talk. You cannot talk. You can look at the guards. So what should we do? I mean, we didn't know what we were up against. Guantanamo was not a prisoner, a prison. When you talk about the prison, there is a prison system. So we started punishing ourselves, throwing the stuff, trying to call the guard donkey, dog, that's big thing. Then somehow some people said, hey guys, hunger strike. What does it even mean, hunger strike? They said, well, you didn't eat or drink. I said, okay, we fast. They said, no, there is no eat or drink. So the conversation started with Arabs. Arabs like to talk too much, Arabs like to talk too much. And said, you know what, the Irish guys, and it was the first time to hear the Irish guys went on hunger strike. Someone said, but they died. Oh, we don't want to die. We're fighting for life here, not to die. And someone said Gandhi was also on a hunger strike. So the debate started, and my neighbor was 15 years old. He was black. He was also treated worse because he's black. And the morning is like, I'm not eating. And I said, as a Yemeni, if my neighbor is not eating, I'm not eating. Either you eat or we starve together, So, and more brothers joined us. Now, second day, we said hunger strike. So I was very in this, okay, we're going to do something now. Like we have something, like you feel you have you have like some agency, you have control. And I remember one of the days, the guards, they used to bring the food. I'm like, refuse. And I said, okay, Osama bin Laden will be happy for you. So we spent, the first hunger strike was 9 days. We were inspired by the Bobby Sands and his friends. Although I didn't know their stories, but it was the first time the Irish guys did it. So there was a general, his name, the one who built Guantanamo, his name, Mike Leonard. And there was conflict between the generals, how they should treat prisoners at Guantanamo. And he came to us. He said, guys, I have looked into the files. None of you should be here. It's like, oh, most of you shouldn't be here. And I didn't know what to tell you. And he wanted to treat us like prisoners of war. But the other side, they said, no, they had no right. They have no right. When we saw the general come to talk to us, I said, okay, we have achieved something. And the 7 days, a Muslim chaplain, are these guys the worst when they come in your clothes, in your language, in your religion? He brought us a fatwa or a religious verdict that there is a council on North America said hunger strike is haram in Islam, is forbidden because you are harming yourself. I'm telling you, you are an idiot. You watch us being stripped, being sexually assaulted, being beaten, tortured, and you couldn't open your fucking mouth. Then you can't now to tell us that hunger strike are haram. No, it is actually halal and it is actually mandatory. You kind of they try to break you in any way can. They would start at the beginning, instigating guards or manipulating your religion, your faith, your friends around you. And we said, no, we will do it. And the ninth day, we achieved something. We were also hunger strike. I'm not gonna lie to you. I want to drink. All my dreams, all my thoughts about the food, about that meal I missed. It was, oh, the hunger strike is painful. So, but honestly, that was nothing compare what you are going through. The dehumanization, the torture, the abuse every single day, day and night. When they see you hunger strike, you can see they try to ignore it, then they try temptation, they try to pressure you. Now you realize, yeah, I'm doing some damage. So that was something. So we spent after that years and years. Trust me, I can tell you almost most of my time in Guantanamo was in hunger strike. We spent years on force feeding. And in Guantanamo, I don't want to talk more about Guantanamo because I need to link it to the 24th, the 5th and 24th, and the importance of hunger strike, So hunger strike was for us was a lifeline. It was the only way we could communicate with the world outside by shutting our mouth. Sometimes you need to shut your mouth. I mean, literally, you need to shut your mouth in order to let your body speak louder than words. So we did, and the Khan administration tried to hide the hunger strike every single time. When the ICRC came, they would take us, remove us, and they, in 2004, after years, 2005, we managed to organize a big hunger strike. That embarrassed the US government. So what the government said, they said Al-Qaeda is conducting hunger strike, a form of jihad. I mean, you can see Ron DeSantis, with 2018, his interview. It's always, the government does not care about the truth, does not care about justice. The government care about to justify their actions, the misuse and abuse of power. Now, those guys who went to Albert and they broke some windows, what they did whatsoever, they are being a terrorist. I mean, it's a joke. Someone went there, a human being, watched other human being being slaughtered, being killed, children beheaded, killed, people burned alive, genocide every single day. What do you expect people to react? If someone went there, they break a window or they put spray some paint on some aircraft. Is this terrorism? Is this really terrorism? We need to take it simply. Is this really terrorism? So, because the U.S. government is complicit what's happening there. It's about the money, about the partnership with the Israeli terrorist. So to flip the narrative, we need to take these guys because we are in power and to turn them as a terrorist, to set them an example. Almost a year now without trial, and they instigate other prisoners. That's a crime itself. Taking some people without try them, throw them in the prison, and instigate other prisoners against them, deprive them of their right. What if someone gets killed? So who is the criminal here? Being in position, wearing a suit and a tie, being able to have that position to speak to the world doesn't make you an innocent. You are the terrorist. That was going on now, and now I believe those government are sponsor terrorism. So if someone break a window or break a glass or break a door, does it make them really terrorists? That what was said about us for years and years and years. It's about the narrative, about secrecy, to have the narrative. So hunger strike was the only way was only way. What was our point? Was not to hurt our bodies. We didn't want to. Nobody want to starve. Nobody wants to. We didn't want to kill ourselves. There is many ways I could kill myself if I wanted to. It was our way to reach out to the world, to the free people, to say, hey, please, we need your help. We need your support. We are innocent. Help us, support us. If we are what they said we are, okay, let us face justice, you know? And we challenge them. We challenge the Americans to try us before their justice system. But the truth is, their justice system needs justice. This is the truth. So it's a cry. I mean, being an activist or being someone who stood against the genocide or against the terrorism being done against Palestinians doesn't end just in the prison. They want to silence you. You know, those activists, they know what they're doing. They continue doing in the prison. What they see, justice. But they use that the government took these people and sent them as an example to you. And if the public let that happen, trust me, tomorrow a kid might be carrying a photo or a flag will be accused of terrorism. A child, mark my words, tomorrow UK will accuse children of being terrorists. How we end up that way? Why we end up that way? Because silence, silence, silence. Because we take it for granted it's the government. No, the government doesn't make them like doing the right thing. Most of the time, the government do the wrong thing. They are the one who sponsor and the genocide in Gaza. So the people should speak out. I mean, speak out, speak loud, speak clear. So what I can ask you today, you know, for our brothers and sisters who will go on hunger strike, support them as much as you can in any way you can, because they are on the front. And if you let them down, it's going to catch up with you guys sooner or later. So we spent years and years in Guantanamo. We never give up. Trust me, I left Guantanamo on the first feeding chair. You know, when we go on hunger strike, they would be like thick tubes through our noses. Sorry, I almost hit my eyes. And it became a way. It became a way to resist. It became a way to survive. It became a way to have control. It became a way to challenge them. It's become our way there at Guantanamo, you know, like it's the way it is. So, and we develop a way how to hunger strike, and we develop many ways how to counter hunger strike, to break it, to hide the numbers, and they have everything. As you see, Guantanamo is still one of the most secretive prisons in the world, and the same narrative, the worst of the worst. That's what they're saying now about the filth in 18. How old those the filth in 24? Kids, 18, 19. Have you considered that? What they have done in their life? You know, these guys should be rewarded for fighting for humanity. Because honestly, today, you will be punished for being a human being, for standing for what is right. You will be accused of anti-Semitic, and a drone will come to drone you because you were, you know, anti-Semitic, and you're labeled as a terrorist. That's it. Simple as that. That we're seeing now with the Venezuela drug dealers. I don't know if they're drug dealers. Honestly, I don't believe the government. You know, they just came and drawn people. Oh, they were terrorists. Just take it for granted. And people should ask about the filth in 24. Who are they? What they have done? What's their history? What their life look like? You can just tell me this guy's a terrorist. Terrorists has become a blanket for the government to cover their abuse, to corruption, and so on. So what I can tell you today, just please, you know, don't let them starve alone. They starve, and we can help them to get their message across. We support them in any way we can. You know, even show solidarity, even one day a week or every 10 days, fast with them. You know, take their photos, send letters, write to them. We don't want them to die, because this is the only way they have their life back. Trust me, because once you are being in the prison, you know, it's like a death sentence. Being on hunger strike is like slow journey toward death. So we need to save them and to save their lives. because what they did, they tried to save children, men, women in Gaza. That's what they're trying to say. That's what they were doing. What I want to say, honestly, my heart is with them. You know, sometimes I kind of painful to hear those guys, kids, heroes, stood for what's right, and they are being punished and being accused of terrorism. I think I'm done. If you have any question, please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Mansoor, for sharing your experience with us. Very inspiring. So that's amazing. Thank you. We'll have a Q&A a bit at the end. So if anybody has a question specifically for Mansoor, you can put it in the chat. I can see people are writing questions already. And one of the questions is, how can we support? So this is what we're going to talk about now. Obviously, very, very important. This is, you know, what we want to talk to everybody here today. After explaining everything. So obviously it's really, really important to support the campaign and the prisoners in any way you can. So we need to talk to everybody about this, raise awareness. That includes when you go to a demo or online, like on our social media, things you can share. On our social media, we will put out specific calls to action as the strike continues. So just keep an eye out for them. And that will give you a better idea of like what to do and when, because obviously we have a strategy thought out behind every call to action. So part of that visibility can include being a bit creative. So you can make, for example, a placard, or you can make a banner to take to a demo. Anything that helps to raise visibility is fantastic. So people can really just use their imagination with that kind of thing. We are going to put, so the posters that we have, we're going to put them up on the website soon so people can print them out if they want to as well. So there will be lots of different groups working with us, both locally and nationally. So, for example, if there's a demo outside your local prison that someone organising, you can join that, or you can link up with your local groups and get involved with the organising with that as well if you feel you know, a bit more motivated. Of course, writing to the prisoners to stop the isolation is really, really important as well, and especially since one of our demands is to stop the censorship. So we need to keep sending people letters to push through that censorship to stop them from withholding all these letters. So another thing that we'll also be doing is, obviously we don't work with institutions, but in this case it is important to pressure local MPs to get them to bring up this question in Parliament, because this does help to pressure from the bottom up. So we will have like a donations page on our website coming up soon. So if you'd like to organise a fundraiser or give some money to organise the actions that we'll be organising, that would also be fantastic. So another thing that I think we would like to emphasise is that we need to educate ourselves more about the prison system, about prison resistance, and the prisoners' experiences as well, because prisoners are often forgotten, ignored, you know, in society. That's what prisons are designed to do, of course. But knowledge is power. So if we learn more about their situation, the history and the political context, we are in a much better position to be able to challenge these specific kinds of repression. There's lots of amazing books, films, talks, lots of things out there to learn from. We have a specific page on our website for that reason. So you can organise a book club or a film night with your friends or with your comrades. And a lot of the recommendations from the book list come directly from the prisoners. So I think that's a great way to connect with them as well through those books. The prisoners also write a lot, and we have all of this available on the website as well to read. Like T, who was on hunger strike, has some prison notes, and the Filton 24 Substack has lots of different articles and poems and things that the prisoners have wrote. So definitely check those out. They are very inspiring. So we've put this on the website, but I'll say this to everybody as well now. If you have any recommendations of books, of films, of articles, talks, things that we can put on our website and share to learn more about the prison system and the prison resistance. You can just put a message in the chat, or you can send it to us later on Instagram or anything like that. So we can start to get inspired in that way as well. Because I can say for a fact that reading books in prison is something that really saves us. And so the other thing, and I think something that the prisoners would say is the most important thing, and that's why one of the demands is to shut Elbit down, is to continue taking action on their behalf, something that they can't do right now because they're locked up in a cell, taking action on their behalf to shut down arms factories wherever we may be. So another question for you, do you know where your local arms factory is? If you do, you can write it in the chat. If not, you need to find out. So I know because I took action at my local factory called Teledyne, that's in Bradford, close to where I live, who they make parts for the F-35 fighter jets. So I found that out thanks to the local people in our community who were campaigning there, and then people started taking action there as well. There we go. Someone shut down the factory in Oldham. That is a legendary story. So massive props to you there. So it doesn't have to be taking action, of course. You can also organise a picket, a blockade. They do that in a lot of different factories all around the country on a regular basis. You just need to find out about it, or you can organise it yourself. And also just, educating people in the local area, because I saw it happen so many times that people were shocked when they found out that there was an arms factory around the corner from them. So, it's all about finding out what's going on and then doing something about it. So what we also have on our website is a form we've just put up to come and work with us. So we are expanding. We need more people to help us out. This is a really effective way to get involved. There's lots of different roles that people can take on, whatever they're interested in. Just fill it in and we'll get in touch with you. But in any way possible, we're going to support the prisoners, and we will continue to shut down these factories however we can. And that's what they tell us. That's the most important thing.
Absolutely. Can I just quickly jump in on that point? For sort of taking action side of things, there's at Direct Action Training UK. They're like an educational group that does workshops and trainings around the UK on direct action. So if that's something that you're interested in, then definitely head on over to their social media at Direct Action Training UK. That's it.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So I think now we've got a bit of time for some questions. So I don't know if there's any in the chat already.
We do have some questions in the chat first. So the first one is, well, actually, there's the couple. I'll tell them to you, then you can answer them, guys. So the first one is, are all 33 of the prisoners hunger striking? And then the second one we've answered about how we can support. And then there's another one that says, how do we anticipate the prisons will respond to the hunger strikes? And how will this influence the upcoming court cases, specifically the Fulton 24 one? So I'll let you answer them two first, and then I'll capture the rest.
Okay, thank you for that. So the first question is, are all 33 prisoners striking? Is that right? Yeah. Okay, so this is something that for security reasons we can't really talk about right now, but we just have to wait a few days. We're starting on Sunday, on the 2nd November, on Balfour Day, so everything will become clear in due course. So we have to be a little bit mysterious for the time being, just to keep everybody safe, and yeah, watch this space. What's the next question?
So how do we anticipate the prisons will respond to the hunger strikers, and how do we think this will influence the upcoming court cases, specifically the Fulton 24?
Audrey, would you like to answer that?
Yeah, in terms of just how we anticipate the prisons responding, the short answer is we can't tell. You know, this on purpose they keep the meetings and any information to do, you know, with how they deal with this very, very private. However, what we do know just from previous hunger strikes, historically, but also most recently with T-Hoxha, is that they watch very, very closely. When someone announces a hunger strike, the prisons will automatically be watching very closely. Now, what we saw with T-Hoxha is they pretend to ignore, and, you know, unfortunately they let her go on, you know, hunger strike for weeks before finally giving in to this demand about the letters and the postcards. But they are watching very closely and monitoring health very closely. And we also saw from reports from them after the hunger strike, and also during the hunger strike, actually, they were, sometimes we went up to her straight and said, the calls need to stop. We know that the pressure from the public works. And not only did we have, you know, many people calling in just, you know, from here, but people internationally also started calling the prison. We had a lot of American comrades also block the prison lines, you know, stating T's demands. And this was really, really powerful. And we know that this had an impact and that this was escalated very high up from the reports from the prison. And what we've seen with T-Hoxha is that eventually they give in, they have to, because they cannot afford for you know, a prisoner, a political prisoner, a prisoner for Palestine, with this much, you know, visibility, with this much public support. So that is where the support comes in again, right? We need the visibility to be really, really high. We need the support from the public to be there. And that's what's going to protect the hunger strikers. With the prison knows that there is eyes globally on them, then they are in a position where they have to act and they have to give in. So yeah, there's no hard and fast way of saying this is exactly how the prison will react. But we know that public pressure works. We know that they monitor hunger strikes very, very closely. And we know that when it comes to breaking point, they have to give in. And so we need to keep up that pressure as the public, and we need to support the hunger strikers, exactly as Mansoor said and exactly as Francesca said. What was the next question, please?
The next question is around the medical treatment and how we can pressure the prisons to ensure that strikers get the necessary healthcare treatment. What can we all do to apply pressure from the outside of the prison?
Nice one. Do you want to take that, Francesca, or shall I?
So medical care, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we are actually working with a team of doctors. Some of them are specialists in this kind of situation. So that's going to be a great help to us. And we understand what to tell the prisoners, how they have to prepare, and what signs we have to look out for, like danger signs, basically. So I can refer back to like T's hunger strike. At a certain point of that strike, we presented an open letter from over 100 medical professionals to demand that T was taken to hospital, and we're also doing like phone blockades for that as well. So these are the kind of actions that we can take on the medical side of things to make sure that the prisoners are not in any physical danger, as in their health. Obviously, it is a risk. We're well aware of that, of the seriousness of it, and we are very well prepared for those risks, as are the prisoners. They understand very, very well what they're doing, and a lot of them will, they do take inspiration from T's example as well. Absolutely. And from Mansoor's example, and so all the other people that have been hunger striking in the past. And what was the other question? How to pressure the prison?
Yeah, it's just what can we do to pressure them to ensure that they're getting the healthcare needs, medical needs.
Absolutely. So Thank you. So yeah, I think in this case, what we will ask everybody to do is look out for the specific calls to action. So we have plans in place for any possible situation that may occur, and we'll have a targeted action to pressure, a specific pressure point to make sure that we get what we need, that the prisoner gets what they need at that point in time. So we will ask people just to wait for that, and when it does happen, just spread the word and get everybody involved.
There's just one more question around how people can support from outside of the UK.
Okay, Audrey, would you like to take that one?
Yeah. So again, it's about so responding to specific call outs. So anything that we put on social media, keep a close eye on us. If in fact we saw with T's example again that getting the calls internationally is actually was really panicked HMP Peterborough. So once those call outs are out and we start asking people to make calls, if you can call internationally, whether that's however you manage that, that is really helpful. 2 is pressuring embassies. So your UK consulate, your UK embassy, wherever you are, you can organize mass emailing into the consulate, into the embassy. Can organize the demonstrations. That was the word. Demonstrations, noise demonstrations, protests outside your UK or British consulate and embassy. We saw this with T Hoxa as well. There were protests in New York, in Belgium, and in Kuala Lumpur. So this really went international, and this was heard loud and clear by the prison. So yeah, I'd say targeting the embassies and consulates, as well as the just contacting the prison and any pressure points that we put out publicly. And again, same goes as what we said before in terms of just raising the visibility of this campaign. Whatever we can do to contact news outlets, just post and share on our own personal social media platforms, raising the visibility of this worldwide will be incredibly helpful to the campaign.
I think
Sorry.
Yeah, okay. I think there was a part of a question that just wasn't answered fully. It was around how it will impact the Filton 24 case. Or will it impact the Filton 24 case? Sorry about the rest of the questions that can't get answered, but I think that one was an important one.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. This is key, and this is one of the aims of the campaign. In fact, to say we're doing this now, so it will impact the case in a positive way. Like I said it previously, this is about visibility, not just for the prisoners, but for the trial, for the legal challenge to the prescription of Palestine action, to link together with all the other things that are taking place, like the Defend Our Jury's mass civil disobedience, to understand that it's all linked together. And if we make this massive public pressure onto the British state, this is what will make this into such a political trial that it can't be denied anymore. So this is something that happened, for example, with Angela Davis's case when she went to trial for murder and got found not guilty because there was such a huge campaign around it, that it couldn't be denied by the judge, that there was no way of having a fair trial with this because it was so political. The origin of the case was political. And so it just, it didn't stand up in court. And that is the whole intention of everything that we're doing right now.
Thank you. I think that is it for questions. Unfortunately, we didn't finish exactly at 8:30. So amazing timing. I think that that's everything then. Any other questions, you can always DM us, contact us via Twitter, social media, Instagram. You can contact us via email. Information is on our website as well. And there are also some forms that you can fill in if you'd like to support and get involved. So please check out our website. We also will be adding this to our YouTube. So if you missed anything, you can rewatch it on there, on our YouTube channel, which was also Prisoners for Palestine. And I think just the final kind of ending really is taken from what Mansoor said, which is that, you know, this is also our responsibility, and the hunger strike is kind of a call to us to apply pressure. So I think just thinking about what that means for you as individuals, and how you can, and what your next steps are going to be after hearing this panel today, which was amazing. So thank you, everyone. And yeah, hopefully you'll hear from us soon.
And don't forget, we've got a demo in London tomorrow.
Yeah.
Oh my
Okay.
God, yes. We have a really important demonstration tomorrow outside the Home Office at 3 p.m. Audrey will be there. We'll also have someone from Cage and a few other people speaking. If you're in and around London and can get there for 3 p.m., please definitely make sure to be there and show your support. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you.
Wa alaikum assalam.